let's get started. The recording's already started. I don't really know what starting really means at this point. My name is Bryan Dam. My title is Patch Lover Extraordinaire here at Patch My PC, and I will be yet again your host for August's Patch Tuesday support group. Right out of the bat, you might notice, hey, this looks a little different. We have finally, after months and months of doing this, we're finally bringing the A team. We have the A team.
The A team.
Yes. I love it. Perfect.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Jordan, our beloved Jordan, you will notice is not here, and he will not be gracing us with his presence. Apparently, he got married. So, good on him. Congratulations, Jordan. And like, you may not know this about Jordan, but he is an Eagle Scout. And if there's any mantra, they're prepared. Always be prepared. So what did Jordan do? He literally hired a person because he knew wasn't going to be here this week. So we have one of the newest members of our team, Carrie Cook, joining us to fill in for Jordan. Which
yes.
The bar is set low, Carrie. There's almost nothing you can do here that is wrong. But let's all take a moment of silence, both for Jordan's new wife and also Carrie, who now has to work for Jordan. And go ahead and just pour one out.
There you go. Perfect. Perfect.
I'm sorry, Carrie. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's all good. Yeah, so I'm the de facto Jordan today.
Yes, absolutely. And we are, instead of our beloved Jacob, we are joined by Andrew. Now, he did do the Lord's work there. He did go get a cap. He did find
I've got a nice
important
Kirby cap here. And matching Kirby shirt. With
that, let's dive into it. Take it away, Carrie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for the introduction there. So just going over the numbers this month. So previous months, May, we had 67 CVEs. In June, we had 58, July, 143. And this month, as it's trending up, we have 185, which seems like a lot, but we're all gonna survive, I promise. Severity of CEs, we have 9 critical, we have 81 important, and 2 moderate, 6 of which are denial of service, 36 are elevation of privilege, information disclosure is 8 of them, remote code execution is 30, we have 4 security feature bypass, and 7 spoofing, and 1 tampering, because why not? So some big takeaways.
Collect them all, right? We run a collect them all.
Collect them all. Just put them in their own buckets.
You couldn't go a week without having that little guy.
Yeah, just knock that one right in there. So perfect. So we have some takeaways from our CVEs this month is Microsoft actually fixed 9 0 days in this round of patches, 6 of which have been actively exploited in the wild. So that's fun. 1 was a remote code execution, 3 were elevation of privilege, and 2 were security feature bypasses. The biggest one out of those 0 days that they fixed, though, I'll put this in the chat, is CVE 2024-38-21-3. So again, that's CVE.
Carrie, when you do that, you got to do that, Carrie. You got to do that with the bingo cadence. It's like CVE.
That's right. CVE.
There's a bingo card out there.
Perfect. And I'll just pop that in the chat. So if you want to follow along with this CVE in particular, it was on Windows mark of the web security feature bypass bug. So for all of us non-technical people out there, basically it was a malicious file bypass for your smart screen, which in doing some more research found out that it's similar to another bypass that was published in February and has a patch. So just kind of going off of the same things. We also had Intel release 9 high severity vulnerability patches. Those all included, elevation of privilege, information disclosure, denial of service, and they patched a total of 70 security holes. So that's a large amount. So just check your systems, make sure you have something there. For Patch My PC, updates in our catalog this month, we have a total of 1,100 updates. 316 of those are security related, and 239 of those updates included CVE IDs. So we're definitely up to date there, making sure your systems are patched if you have Patch My PC or thinking about it. And then I'll give you 2 more CVE news and then pass it on to Bryan. We have, and I'll put these in the chat as well. We have CVE 2024-38202 and CVE 2024-21302. These both were revealed in kind of DEF CON and Black Hat by researchers. Microsoft has patched these since then, so just make sure that your system is up to date and has these. They are both allow an attacker to have a downgrade attack, so make sure that you're checking your update history, make sure the patch is actually installed, and your systems remain intact. That's all I have, so I'll pass it off to the wonderful Bryan, and
right.
yeah, can continue.
Oh, skipped right to the end. Skip to the fun part. I'm going to talk about that last. So our friend, I really got to figure out how to disable Teams notifications, but I suck at life. So here we are. You're going to see all sorts of NDA things, I'm sure. Yep, here we go. Here we go. So you remember our good friend WinRE and updating WinRE, and there was these those 2 KBs, and you were getting errors on because there was not enough free space on the recovery partition. And we've been talking about this for months. I've been talking to some people that I am lucky enough to know internally at Microsoft for months, and like, we're gonna, we can't fix this. It's unfixable. And that's true. You can install if an update needs space. It needs space. It's hard to install updates with 0 free space. Andrew, why do you be like this? But Microsoft has said they fixed it, and I was always kind of, they said, well, we've added checks to make sure that this won't happen. And I was kind of confused when they said that, because like, well, in order to do that, you must have re-released the update, right? Like, you must have updated it, but they hadn't. Like, I could tell that it was the exact same update. And sure enough, this month they finally did. They did exactly that. They have killed the 2 older KB articles. So if you search for KB 503.440 and 4441, they redirect now to these new KBs. So they have re-released these updates. They're still not within WSUS or in the catalog, so you won't see these in Config Manager. You still can't go to catalog.microsoftupdate.com or whatever and download them. But if you're using Windows Update for Business / Intune, you will now see these flow down. These new ones flow down to you. And what the main change in them is simply that they will not apply if they cannot find, it will not be offered if it cannot find 250 megabytes of free space on the recovery partition, which is good. It means you won't see errors, but I will also let you know that it also means you're not secure. Now, what are you secure from? It's a BitLocker. Just as a reminder, this is a solution to the BitLocker bypass vulnerability. It's a kind of complex downgrade attack. If it's worth freaked out about it, because yes, you can decrypt BitLocker encrypted devices or drives with it, so that's a problem. But I don't know that's that scary. So there you go. There it is. The next thing, we're going to talk a little bit about some other patching.
Brian's going to yell at his children right now to stop downloading Fortnite.
Look to my left, and he's I live in an actual city, by the way. Not like I'm not in the proverbial third world, but I can actually get good internet. So I'm sorry. But just so you're aware, this is a long-running KB, and it's about hardening the domain join process. And in this month's cumulative updates, they are removing the sort of workaround that they had in here. So they put out some hardening, and you could get around that hardening by setting this registry key NetJoinLegacyAccountReuse in the August patch releases. So if you are trying to ignore this hardening by using this workaround, that is going to stop working after you install August patches. So go ahead and be aware of that and stop using that. The solution to this isn't exactly rocket science. You just need to go ahead and make sure the accounts you are using. I'm going to just get rid of Teams. I hate you people. What could go wrong? What could go wrong?
You can't escape Teams, Bryan. It's coming for you.
I know. You can get around this by make sure that your domain join account is in a specific has a specific group policy targeted to it. It's in this KB. So just be aware that if your task sequences are failing for some reason on the join domain step, go ahead and take a look at this. It might be the reason why. Moving on. Microsoft sent out this rather ominous and yet vague thing about August patches, that the DNS hardening changes that are in these patches might cause DNS to fail. And you might say, oh, great, what is their workaround? What are they telling you to do? They are telling you to make sure that your, and I quote, these errors may occur if the domain configurations are out of date. Now, if you have some beautiful insight to what the hell they're talking about there, by all means, come off mute or send it to QA. But that is a very kind of scary thing. Hey, DNS might fail. And the solution to make sure that doesn't happen is make sure your domain configurations are not out of date. No idea what that means, but just be aware if you are seeing DNS failures. Yeah, that's sort of a known issue. Last month, in July, the releases of the patches triggered a whole whack of BitLocker recovery key prompts upon reboot. I am seeing anecdotal evidence that is actually solved. I think that in August, there's been some initial testing, and people who have reported that in the past have more or less said it doesn't seem to be happening. There's other anecdotal evidence I have here related to these same patches that there's a bunch of slowdowns for server 2019 that this cumulative update seems to be slowing the whole machine down. And the sort of solution is to, this is all anecdotal, but the proposed solution is you might get away with that if you clear out C Windows System cat root 2. Or just uninstall that patch and they see resource utilization go back to normal. This same patch might also be breaking group policy item level targeting. So those are just two things to sort of be aware of. If you see your 2019 servers start going wonky on you, go ahead and check those out. A lot of people, a recurring issue with the last set of updates has been destroying the remote desktop session broker. That is still a known issue with these releases. So if you are running said session broker and you were hoping that Microsoft would release a cumulative update that did not screw you over, this is not your month. And for that, I apologize on behalf of not me. Not me.
You apologize on behalf of the people in charge.
Yeah. So that's all just news about some of the this month's patching releases for Microsoft. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the fun things that happened in the world while we were all away. This is just a beautiful headline to see. Nearly all AT&T cell customers' call and text records are exposed in a massive breach. That's exactly the kind of headline one loves to hear. I am a cell phone Luddite, so I guess it's not really my problem. But I'm guessing non-zero of you have cell phones. And that was relevant to you. This is a real interesting one. I actually tried to reach out to there was a black hat. There's a black hat section talking about a Windows update downgrade attack, and I tried to reach out to Elon Leviev, that's how you pronounce it, to get him to join us. But he probably rightfully said, "I don't know who you are, and I'm not going to respond to random people on Twitter." So I don't blame him for that. But this is an interesting one that, and we got 3 links here. So here's Bleeping Computer's take on it. Here's the actual black hat session. And why this thing is, you can actually go look at the actual presentation, the actual slide deck he presented. The sort of TLDR on this is, well, actually the moral of this is a moral we all should hopefully know. If you give people admin access on your box, it is no longer your box anymore, and they can do really odd things. Now, why I would even bother bringing this one up, because if that was it, it was just like, hey, if somebody can do an admin thing, then they can do bad things. Like, that's not really even worth talking about these days. But why this is interesting is for two reasons. One reason is the thing that Microsoft has tried to fix, which is as a low rights user, you were able to monkey with the windows.old folder, or there's something you could do that could trigger a recovery that would allow you, that a non-admin, if they could trigger that person to then do a recovery, elevate to admin, they would be able to do an elevation of privilege attack and start doing things as admin. It's I still don't have my head around that one. That seems kind of far out, but not entirely out of the realm of possibility with a bit of social engineering. What is more interesting to me is the second part of it, which Microsoft, as I can tell, has kind of said, well, we haven't fixed yet, and we understand it, which is that there's a couple of files that apparently are not signed and yet are kind of critical to the Microsoft update stack. And you, as an admin, would be able to overwrite those files to basically do two things. First is that when the update stack goes to update, install updates, it just wouldn't do it. It'll basically install what the author calls empty updates. And so A, future updates that you apply won't actually install. And then B, the second file they would modify so that it would actually report itself as patched. And so that to me is the novel thing here, because we think of, okay, if somebody hacks my machine and gets admin, they're gonna crypto locker it and I'm screwed. Well, what if instead they just stuck around and they actively prevented you from installing any future update? Now that seems that, and still report that it's fully patched, right? So that to me is kind of interesting and cool in a really awful kind of way. Now, what sort of really, I wish I could have got a hold of the author here, because I'm a little confused as to how Defender wouldn't be able to pick that up immediately. I mean, you were literally you're replacing system files with malicious files to hide your activity. It seems like you would kind of figure that out. And in fact, that's what Microsoft is, the fix is what Microsoft is having to do, which is like go through a whole catalog of all the old files that have ever existed and put basically a whitelist in so that it knows that those are the right files. But that's going to take a lot of time, because again, that almost needs to be every single file they need the hash of every single version of that file that they've ever released and shove that in there as a whitelist. So I get why it's kind of a complicated task. But again, the novel part here is that somebody with admin could, in theory, hack Store the Box in such a way that no further update would apply, even though it reports itself as fully updated. And in doing so, they can bring back all sorts of really fun 0 days that we've talked about in the past. So that's interesting, worth a look.
Yeah, one thing I will say on that is the CVEs that I put in the chat, the last two, those are the ones that are associated with this. So right. Just a heads up.
Yep, and the two CVEs, one deals with the Windows old rollback scenario. Okay, how do you do that? And the other one talks about the second part, which is, you can do the whole updating trickery. And that's in that CVE in MSRC, they're kind of like, yeah, we know we can't quite fix this quickly. And they give some mitigations that I don't think are particularly practical for.
Maybe not ideal.
Well, I mean, it's just not really practical. But again, somebody needs to get on that. For those to work, somebody needs to get on that box and have local admin. And I pretty disabled Defender. So I'm kind of not overly worked up about it, but it is an interesting concept. I'm also wondering why those files just aren't signed. Like, that's super confusing to me. Like, they seem like kind of critical system files that would be signed by Microsoft, and you would therefore not be able to just replace them. But it's the world.
Here we are, living in the future.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah, absolutely. Out of this month's patches, here's another one, and I think Carrie might have mentioned this in her preamble there, but there is one sort of TCP level IP issue with the IPv stack, which might mean it's kind of vulnerable. The details are, we don't know yet. But Microsoft gave this kind of one this is a high concern, and critically, even though it's not currently being exploited, this seems like one that should be easily exploitable remotely to make it wormable, which is to say that you get it on one box and then it can easily spread. And it's really just, if one vulnerable box can talk to another one, this will do it. And your local Microsoft firewall isn't going to prevent it. It's really just if one machine can send a malicious packet a maliciously formed IPv6 packet to another vulnerable device, they might be able to get their code to elevate. So absolutely worth looking for. And really the solution there, here's the MSRC breakdown of it. The answer there is go ahead and make sure you patch quickly. So this is one that your security departments might come down to you and say, might tell you, hey, we need you to go ahead and do that. Okay, so moving along. Here's just some general non-security related news for us. So just to support it, Windows device configurator is migrating to a unified settings platform in Intune. So if you're using Intune, all your settings are apparently going into a single place. And if that is interesting or you have to deal with that, go ahead and pay attention, and you will want to read that blog and give some feedback to that team. Oh, we're going to do this for all of these. Thank you. Introducing Windows 11 checkpoint cumulative updates. So there is going to be, we're excited to further optimize the delivery. Essentially, this isn't hot patch, but it's basically hot patch. Hot patch being the like rebootless thing, which is basically they're saying, hey, what we're going to do. I mean, today the scenario is you have a release to manufacturer, ISO or Sage, and then every update is cumulative up to there, and every update is fully cumulative back to that release from manufacturing. And there's ways they try to make those smaller, but basically what they're going to do is say, well, okay, instead of that, we're going to have checkpoint updates. And this is also, and how this exactly gets wrapped up into UUP, don't ask me, I haven't got my head around it yet. But the point is that there's essentially going to be, instead of just there's release to manufacturer and the latest CU, we're going to have updates in between that are basically become checkpoints, and those are going to be full patches that have everything, so that we only need the delta, so that the deltas only have to be back to that last checkpoint. Now again, how this is all going to work, I'm a little confused. How's that going to work with supersedence and ConfigMgr? Also still a little confused. So I have questions here, but just be aware that that is coming in Windows 11. Last month, we talked about this, the retirement of the Office 365 connector with Microsoft Teams. If you don't use these and don't know what I'm talking about, this was a very simple and straightforward way to have applications send notices to Microsoft Teams. And again, that's a huge oversimplification, but it was a really easy way to build some automation processes. And we even use these in our own products here at PatchMyDC to give you notices. And Microsoft came out with a very aggressive deprecation plan. And it's hard to believe at this point that there was anything other than intentional to be like, well, we'll just do this and see who complains about it. And readers, I'm here to tell you, or listeners, I guess, I'm here to tell you, boy, did people complain. And how. And how. And so they have now come out late in July, to say, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to go ahead and push that back to December 25th. So again, if you're using these things, great, go ahead and look at those things, but just know that your existing things are not literally on the precipice of failing in the next coming months. You have a little longer to go ahead and transition over to those things. For those concerned about our own internal processes, Cody has been doing the Lord's work. I've seen demos of this new process working. I believe our plan is to support both for a while, and we'll be ready for this deprecation when it finally happens. But where it is going to happen until December 2025, and various big banks also tell them, no, we're still not ready. Screw you. Please delay this longer. If you want a really fun read, here's a good one. How a North Korean fake IT worker tried to infiltrate us. This image, by the way, is AI generated. So this is interesting. There was another story. I wish I grabbed the link of where they found like literally a server farm, or basically like a jump box farm in like some rando house. I don't know if anybody has a link for that. Go ahead.
I have a link for it. I'll go grab it. Yeah,
throw it in the chat. But you know, I guess this is social engineering at a really fun, interesting, and scary as shit level. And so this is worth your time, I think, reading, because they kind of just give us an example. Like, this guy got hired, they were onboarding, they only noticed it because he started doing like really weird things, and they had the systems in place to be like, why is this guy who's been here 3 hours doing these things? And that's how they found out they had actually hired a totally fake person that doesn't actually exist. from North Korea,
Yeah.
of all places. So
Well,
it's
and
fun.
it's crazy that it was in like East Tennessee. You know, it's like a very like rural
Yeah.
place, you know.
Oh yeah, your
Strange.
farm. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I mean they can
Yeah.
put the farm wherever they want, right? Like it doesn't
Sure,
really
yeah.
matter. And I
So
think it was
there's the
just a
link.
house, right? Like it was just a residence.
Yeah, it was just it's, you know, nothing special about it, no big thing. So
Yeah.
I
So
just put
I
a
guess
link in the chat. So if anybody
yeah,
wants extensive reading.
I guess if there's any landlords on the call, you can now add, in addition
That's
to
right.
a grow house where they are chopping around the electrical
That's right.
meter. Now you have, you know, North Korean jump box farm,
That's right.
and I guess BitLocker, sorry, Bitcoin too, Bitcoin mining. I guess you got to worry with that. Moving along, this is interesting. In the new release of Windows 22, Windows 11 22H2, they're reducing the BitLocker eligibility. What specifically? This is kind of a good thing. What they're basically saying is the hardware requirements for BitLocker is not as stringent as it currently is for the latest releases of 24H2. The other interesting part about this is that they're going to enable this on home PCs. Or sorry, the home SKU of Windows by default. So basically what they're saying is by default, every single Windows device is going to be BitLocker, which sounds good. Like that sounds reasonable. There might be reasons you don't want that. I don't know what they are. But even home, that's the part that kind of shocked me. It's like, oh, they're gonna BitLocker home machine. Good on them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why not?
why not?
Let's protect ourselves. Sure.
Absolutely. Another thing that happened that was interesting to me. This is one of our own blog. Here's I wanted to show this first. So this was news to me. This is a Twitter thread. Mike Marable, who I know, he's on the east side of Michigan. He was installing actual old instance of Windows 11, I think, or maybe it was Windows 10. He was doing a test on 22H2. It was a very old ISO. And during the OOBE process, out of box experience, it started installing updates. And he's like, whoa, what the heck's going on? This is news to me. Maybe you all knew, but I don't follow the consumer side. We actually just talked about Windows Home. I don't really follow the consumer experience that closely, but apparently this has been here for some time. So for some time, if you go to Best Buy and you buy a Dell or HP and you bring it home, in theory, you would get presented with a screen like this, which is and it's going to apply the latest cumulative update security, the latest security and feature updates. Not say that, I don't mean the latest FU. It's not going to bring you to the latest version of Windows 11, but it is going to install any new features within that current build and bring it up to the latest cumulative update, which for consumers is good. I have talked to those that I know within Microsoft, Aria Hansen in particular, and this is not supposed to show for enterprise. So if you are doing autopilot, if you're joining to an Active Directory domain or joining it to Entra/Azure Active Directory, you should not see this. You should not see this. But if you want more details about what the heck's going on, our very own Rudy wrote a totally reasonable blog post on this, not at all decrypting, not decrypting, reverse engineering some fun things going on in the enterprise space. Because while you may not all want that experience that the consumers have, some of you may in fact want to deliver fully patched devices coming out of autopilot or just OOBE in general. And he talks a little bit about this. Related to this, this is a niche case, but it is a case I'm aware of, which is if you were imaging a device and it comes up and nobody logs into it, by default, Windows 10 and Windows 11, they will not install updates. They will sit there without, again, you've imaged a device, you've gone through the process, but nobody has actually logged in. It will sit there and will not apply updates. Now that is sort of by design, because what the experience that they expect is somebody actually signs into a device they just imaged, and they don't really want to start applying software updates in the middle of that process of getting that first user signed in, right? It's a process that already takes several minutes, and they don't really want it to be installing software updates. So it's an intentional design on their part, but there's some really niche use cases. Adam Juliich had one where they imaged a device. They don't know who it's for yet, and they're putting it on a cart and they're letting it sit there ready for somebody to do. And ideally, it would apply software updates while it's sitting there doing nothing. And so there's now a RegKey that you can apply during your imaging process to make sure that, okay, yes, it's sitting there, nobody's logged in, but it's going to go ahead and start installing software updates while it sits there. Again, super niche use case. This one didn't get any publicity that I'm aware of. I didn't learn about this until somebody mentioned it on Twitter, so I bring it up here.
Now we know.
And now we know, exactly.
Doing the Lord's work, telling everybody about it.
Doing the Lord's work. Okay, so now we get into what's new in ConfigMgr and Intune. For ConfigMgr, there was a sort of out-of-band / hotfix. So I don't know that this shows up in, the console or not. Maybe if I actually read this thing, it would tell me. Yeah, it doesn't. But there's a hotfix, and this hotfix does really something very specifically. And what it specifically does is that the ConfigMgr agent tries to set scan source policies. Now, when I say scan source, I mean the policies that say, hey, I want my feature updates to come from Windows Update instead of WSUS, but I want my quality updates to come from ConfigMgr, and I want my drivers to come from Windows Update, but I want these other Microsoft updates to come from WSUS, right? The ability to sort of split brain what the Windows Update agent is going to do. Understand that for Patch My PC, third-party patches always come from WSUS. That is always the scenario. There's no other, so it doesn't matter how you configure those things. It always, for us, for the sake of our product, you are always pointed at WSUS in that scenario. But the ConfigMgr agent has tried to configure this for you on your behalf, just like it used to do dual scan, right? It would disable dual scan. We all got freaked about dual scan. And so the ConfigMgr team said, we'll disable that with local policy. And they did so the same with scan source policy. But the problem is they kept getting it wrong. They kept screwing it up. And so what this update does, and all this update does, as far as I can tell from the limited testing I've done, is it stops trying. That's it. Just stops trying. And I'm picking my words very carefully here. It doesn't clean up the mess. Okay. It doesn't fix it. It just says, I was using local policy to do these things, and I'm not going to enforce it anymore. So if your agents are messed up and you want a different configuration, this doesn't fix that. It just allows you now to go in and fix it yourself. Now, you'll probably do that with group policy, okay, to go set scan source. And maybe now, finally, we can have drivers coming from a Windows Update for Business / Intune, while you still have your feature and quality updates come from ConfigMgr. I haven't tested that far to figure out if that works. It's what a lot of people, or a non-zero number of people, want, but it's never worked because ConfigMgr came on like a wrecking ball and said, no, here's your scan source policies. So that's all it does. Because Katie talked about, this should fix feature on demand and language packs. I'm here to tell you anecdotal evidence and testing suggests that's not true. It is possible that this allows you now to configure it correctly to make that work, but you might also break ConfigMgr in the process. Because again, all this update does, it says ConfigMgr agent's not trying anymore. You get to configure it the way you want it. But if you configure it in a way that breaks these things, it's not going to, that doesn't fix your problem. This means you're doing the configuration, not ConfigMgr. And I'll try and throw it in the chat while we were talking about Crowdstrike at the end a little bit, because I actually found one of my friends, Dana Ratliff, potent engineer, actually had a little post and a script he was running to try and fix some of that RSAT and language pack issues. And so that might be relevant to you here. And I'll try and get that in the chat here later. Moving on to Intune. Again, here's the big list of what's new. There is some really interesting stuff, I think, in here. The big one for if you're using or want to use the Intune suite, that is now in GCC High and DoD. So if there's any three-letter agencies here on the chat, you can now go ahead and pay, what is it, $10 a device a month to get some features. Cloud PKI, if you're using that, you can now delete a certificate of authority. You can temporarily pause a whole CA. You can also revoke CA certificates. That's good. A big one that we're sort of really happy about here is that Intune now supports additional macOS app types for the company portal. Now that is a really weird heading because it actually doesn't tell you what they did. What they did is they have for a while now supported unmanaged disk image, DMG, and packages, PKG files. And they are now allowing you, but you couldn't deploy them as available. And now they are allowing you to. So now there's almost complete parity between the three type of Mac apps within Intune. I believe it is either disk image or unmanaged PKGs that you cannot deploy for uninstall. It's one of those two. Somebody go and fact check me on that one. But there's almost complete parity. That is good. That is good for us. I'm excited to see that full parity. That will let us do some fun things that we have on deck.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Lastly, there's a new operating system. So if you're doing filters, there's now a new, you can filter based on operating system, which is useful because apparently somewhere in here, they also now, there you go, there it is here. They added support for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. That's interesting to me. I did not see that coming, but here we are. So, which I guess would make this operating system filter even more important to you, although I don't actually see it listing Red Hat Linux, which is funny. Maybe that's an order of operation. Yeah, there you go. Maybe they added that later. Oh, that's not it. There we go. New support Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Okay, so that is the end of the news. I'm going to talk briefly. I don't think anybody here has not heard about the fact that there was a Crowdstrike incident. I don't know how that would be conceptually possible. What I'm going to do is just do a super high level kind of overview of like what the hell those people did, what went wrong, what I think the real problem is, and then we will open this up for people sharing horror stories, or
yeah, we're
as we were saying,
excited.
people that are using Sentinel-1 and just want to dunk on people that use CrowdStrike. I mean, I'll allow it. I'll allow that too.
That's right.
So what actually happened here? What did CrowdStrike do? So because you're like, oh, this all happened in one day. That's not true. So in February of this year, they released an update to their kernel mode driver. So what is a kernel mode driver? So if you want to do some really, really advanced things within the Windows operating system, you might need to get down to the kernel level, and Microsoft allows this. Now we'll talk about that in a hot second. But if you want to do amazing things, all the EDR stuff, you got to get at a super low level. And for that, Microsoft has allowed people to write their own software in the form of kernel drivers that work at the kernel level to do those things. And CrowdStrike released a new one of those in February, and it went well. They used that new rollout in February. They then used the new features. They had it in March and April, and everything went well. But then July 19th came around, and they screwed up. And literally from this is their guidance. They added an extra field. So there's 20 properties that it supports in their. They released a definition update, or what they call a channel file, and that file had 21 properties, not 20, and that created a out of memory bounds error that created a blue screen that you are all probably have seen images of. Now, I walked through that because there's two reasons I wanted to walk through what actually happened, because there was a couple what I think is kind of FUD going on. Right out of the bat, people started looking at the dumps, looking at the machines post crash, and they're like, oh, this is dumb. Their definition file is all nulls. That wasn't it. That's seeing a file full of nulls is merely a byproduct of some weird oddities about exactly how the Windows operating system saves files to disk, and how not actually real time that is, and what it does in the intervening process as it overwrites a file. That wasn't the root cause. They didn't let a file full of null values go out the door as a QA process. That's not what happened. The other thing that people, Microsoft, I should have had a link for this too. Microsoft kind of clapped back and saying, hey, Microsoft took heat from this. And in fact, I think Delta is trying to sue Microsoft. I don't even have the Delta thing, but like Delta is going to try to sue Microsoft for allowing this happen. And they weren't alone. They're not alone. A lot of people said, well, this is Microsoft's fault. Microsoft let this happen because they support those kernel mode drivers. And Microsoft kind of clapped back and said, well, we have to. The EU made us do it. right? Like the EU put this box and said, the EU makes us do this. And now I'm slipping into opinion now. But if you do the kind of some due diligence and read the actual what the EU actually said, what the EU really said is like, well, Microsoft can't do something internally only for Microsoft that non-Microsoft entities are not allowed to do. Which is to say, if Microsoft, let's say Defender, has a kernel mode driver, then anyone else, any other third party, should also be allowed to have a kernel, a driver that runs in kernel mode. That if there's an API, then everyone needs to be able to use that API, not just Defender. And that I think is reasonable sense. What they didn't really say in any kind of legal terms is, well, you have to support kernel mode drivers. So Microsoft could, I think, absolutely change this to work more like Apple does, because Apple has the same thing, and Apple does not let you write kernel mode code. What they have is a set of APIs that give you some really deep access into the kernel, but it is only through those APIs. It's protected through those APIs, and your code runs in user space in such a way that it will never crash the OS. Now, could Microsoft do that? I think technically the EU lets them, but on the flip side, I happen to work for some people that work for Microsoft. And like, yeah, you're probably right. That's probably true. But I assure you, if Microsoft changed that, Microsoft changed their mind in a way that negatively impacted a multi-billion-dollar security industry, they get sued anyways. So it's not really about the EU. It's like, oh, we now change this, and now all the stuff you've built no longer works. And in fact, there might be functionality that even Defender can no longer do because we're not going to allow this access to the kernel. Absolutely, that's yet another like legal brouhaha that they're going to have to go through. So trying to bring a little bit of clarity there. There's a lot of people. I saw this happen in chat. A lot of people saying, "Oh, we're going to drop CrowdStrike and go to the next one." I'm here to tell you that every vendor I've seen has done this exact same thing. Not the same impact. I'll give you that one. Okay, I can't think of another scenario where they took down 8.5 million devices in damn near real time across the globe. I'll give that one to you. But what was their root problem? What was their real sin? Their real sin is the thing that everybody on this call knows. You don't YOLO into production. That's it. Like that's what they learned, because that's what they weren't doing. Did they do quality tests? Sure. But those channel files or definition updates, was there any kind of rollout plan, or did they just YOLO those to every single endpoint on the face of the planet in real time? And the answer is, family, yes, they did. And that's a lesson they learned. But everyone else has learned that lesson. A year ago, we were talking about how a Defender got rid of all shortcuts to Office on the desktop. And there was a big, holy shit, I can't open Word. Yes, you could. It's there. It's a shortcut. It's not on your desktop. Like, get over it. But it's the same thing, right? It's the same problem. And what did Defender do? Well, we're going to have a canary. We're going to let you go into canary Defender updates for the definition files. And some of you probably are. And this is exactly what CrowdStrike is going to do. And they say that basically down here, yes, whatever we're going to do, we're going to do those things. So, I mean, by all means, you could say, hey, we're going to get rid of CrowdStrike and go to somebody else. But McAfee has done it. I think Percy has done it. Like, I mean, any one of those things we can point to, hey, they didn't do quality control. They YOLO'd out this definition update or whatever their equivalent is, and it negatively impacted customers. CrowdStrike, don't get me wrong, they all deserve to be crapped on for it. Like, I'm not trying to absolve CrowdStrike of any capability. I'm just saying, if you're like, oh, well, I'm going to go to SentinelOne, yes, SentinelOne probably either has or is going to do it. What I would say to those using SentinelOne is, do they allow you, the system administrator, to configure a staged rollout of definition updates? Because if they don't, then yes, they too are one update away from joining this super happy party. I would love to hear from people. Again, you can throw shade those SentinelOne users, but I would really like to hear the stories of some administrators that have had to climb up on 20-foot ladders and go deal with kiosks, because I know you're out there.
Let us know your process.
There we go.
Oh, we got one. Here we go.
Okay.
All right, Jesse,
All right,
take you off mute.
So I should preface this by saying this didn't happen to me, so I'm sharing a story. Okay, so
hearsay.
You know the person?
It's fine.
I have a friend.
That it happened to?
So the last 3 places I've worked before this job all got hit by this, and I have former colleagues on all of those teams, and we're all like in signal chat programs. So when this hit, I was like, hey fellas, like I'm pretty sure you guys all moved to CrowdStrike after I left. And they're like, fuck you. And these are some big companies, right? So like one of them's like 6,000 employees, full global. One is a hospital chain, which is the entire state, which is about 10,000 employees. And the other is the state itself, which is about 10,000 employees. And so both those entities, techs were like physically traveling to every, inch of the state, courthouses, office buildings, hospitals, like, rehab facilities, and physically touching all these devices and doing it. Basically, everyone stopped doing their normal jobs from the entire IT staff and was repurposed to doing this. So like the lights were on, but no one was like monitoring the switches. So if anything happened there, like it would have been really bad. Luckily, it doesn't sound like there's any horror stories, but like it was like 24/7 for, I don't know. It was one of the places was like 2 or 3 weeks. And we check in at the end every day, and I was just, I'm working real hard over here with the vendor. I'm really sweating stuff. But yeah, it was pretty entertaining for a couple of weeks.
Do you know what they did for like the remote user thing is the one that like did they just tell everyone like, yeah, I'm sorry, we have you probably have a work agreement with you that you never have to come into the office, but you have to come into the office now. Like somebody has to drive this damn laptop to somebody you can touch it. Or were they trying to like give those users like self-remediation steps? So
at least for the state and the hospital, like they don't have as many remote workers. So like they literally touched everything. And like, Vermont's a pretty small state for those who think we're in Europe or in the Northeast, and yeah, we're tiny. But the global company, I honestly don't know. Like even the tech guys were like, I don't know what we're gonna do, because like, they had stuff all over Asia, and I was like, you're not gonna like send all your American tech guys and fly them all around the world. That doesn't seem super feasible. On the other hand,
scale.
Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, so I think that was kind of hush hush, and I don't think I got the impression they weren't really going to tell me what was happening there, but it sounded like a real good show.
Yeah, I mean, when this all went down, like the hospital, like those other like enterprise, hospital environments, education environments, and state like government stuff, like those were my own. But the real ones, I'm like, we all just went like fully remote. Like, I mean, I've in the IT side of things, like I see it, like I see job offers, sorry, not job offers, job postings, and like everyone wants to know, like, is this remote or not? Because if it's not, like, screw you, right? Like there's a real strong push to that, and I'm like, oh man, how would that work?
Yeah,
and I think the answer is probably poorly. I think the answer is poorly.
Unrelated to this, we had a like a business continuity meeting that happened like the week after this, and I used this as an example, and I was like we would have to come up with a plan. Like seriously, like, are we gonna like fly the tech guys around to every single person's house across the North America, because or have them come to the office, because those are really the only two options. And there's not a great solution. And I was just I was happy it didn't happen.
Except you can't fly because.
Well, exactly.
Flights were down too.
Have to fly Southwest.
Well, so you have to get in a car and drive.
I was like, just a heads up, like, be cautious flying, be cautious on the subway. Like, you guys might have some trouble for the next, day or two.
All right. Thank you so much, Jesse. Thanks for being the first. Thanks for coming off mute and being brave and sharing. Hey, anyone else?
We got 2 others in line. 3 others in line.
All right.
Oh yeah, there you go. Let's hear them.
Dennis.
I want to be clear. I will stay here as long as it takes for everyone to have their talk. You can leave if you want. I might even have a meeting. I don't care. I'm here to hear.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Dennis here. I was gonna say, luckily we didn't get hit by CrowdStrike, but yeah, this is more kind of a because those of us who deal with management people is a lot of our vendors. So we do logistics, and one of our vendors that handles logistics went down. So they leverage these cloud, they leveraging the cloud. That's also part of disaster recovery. What happens if your critical vendor goes offline? Ours was a truck truck tracking software and whatnot. But could you imagine a credit card processor getting hit? You take down all those on. It's like but unfortunately, I think we've all been there. Those have been large companies. Each company has their own maturity level of stuff. My company is a great company, but they started as this group of people in St. Louis, and they're now 4 times the size they were 10 years ago. And they still sometimes think they're a small company. Like, oh, you are not a small company.
Yeah.
You have to think, outside the city and so forth. But yeah, I know for us, it's kind of like, hey, so what's your disaster recovery for when all of a sudden you can't track your trucks anymore, or you can't process credit cards? How are you going to communicate to your end users, and so forth, and whatnot, not scramble and try to think of a solution on the spot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Dennis.
All right, who's next? Did everybody go away? Andrew?
No, I believe Jesse already spoke. We have Justin Marshall.
Yeah, so somebody already kind of hit on this in the chat, but we have Crowdstrike on every Windows device in our environment. So for probably 3 days, it's exactly what they described earlier. It was our entire IT department was playing runaround.
Oh my gosh.
Going from device to device. But what made it more fun for us was that we also have BitLocker encryption on every single device.
Oh.
When you tried to do the fix, you had to first get the BitLocker key. So we also had a team of people just sitting in a room, and as they would get to a station, they would put in Teams the name of the station, and then somebody else in that room would have to pull up the BitLocker key and send it back to them to put that in order to be able to go in and remove the Crowdstrike update.
Oh man. Whew. Can I ask how long it took your organization to get back up?
Probably, well, so I work at a university, and we got lucky that it happened in the summer and not.
Yeah, that was fortunate. Heaven forbid it happened during classes.
The flip side is it also meant that faculty was not really here, and so we've been proactively just going from office to office, trying to hit the faculty machine, because they're not going to come back until right before classes start, and then they're not going to be able to get in. So
it's a good thing you had literally nothing else to do in the summer, right?
Yeah, it's not like he had any other plans.
Next up, we've got Haley.
Oh, is it the Haley?
It's the Haley.
Yes, it's me.
Oh.
Yeah. So we lucked out.
Or should I say that Haley, I guess.
Oh, wow. I
wow.
liked the Haley better. That was a lot.
Okay.
I like that a lot better. I'd like to keep that. Can I be like an OG a little bit, please?
Yeah.
So we have a Seattle and London team, and so we really lucked out that the person that was on call was not me. And then
did you do this like everyone, like who touches their nose?
Well,
that's right. Nose goes.
I was supposed to be going to bed, and I was like terminally scrolling on Twitter, and I was like, wait, what the hell's going on? And then I like look at our Slack, and it's blowing up. And then thankfully one of our London guys woke up early, and so he started kind of taking over. Most of our machines were off, so we really lucked out there. But the big takeaway is that after this happened, I went and demoed to our InfoSec team. I was like, hey, remember how I was telling you I wanted everything on Defender? Look, we have Defender for endpoint, we have Defender for server, we have Defender for cloud. These are all the things we could do. And they're like, oh, that's really cool. And I was like, yeah, so I'm turning this stuff on. And they're like, oh, sick. So anyway, turned a terrible crisis into a win for my team. So that worked out. But yeah, we were really lucky that pretty much everything was offline. And I think there were only like 5 machines in Seattle that had to physically be touched. So
nice.
Yeah. So that's it.
Glad it worked out for you guys. That's awesome.
Thanks, Haley. Way to dodge a bullet.
Haley.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, see if I can paste this. I don't know if you can paste images in the chat, but I'm about to try. Probably
I
not.
don't think you can.
No, okay.
You can't.
Oh, killing me. All right, the anonymous attendee asks us, how do I claim this meeting against my health spending account since it's free post CrowdStrike therapy? And I'm here for it. Absolutely. There should be exactly. You should go take an image of the recording. That should be your receipt. You could charge however much you want for it. But I love where your heart is at. They literally was an anonymous attendee. Otherwise, I would be more than happy to give somebody all the credit in the world for making me laugh. And at times like this, that's all we really have.
That's right.
A bit of laughter. You can't you can't do anything but laugh. My hat's off to you. If I could do better than a $10 gift card to each of you that had to deal with this crowd, I would absolutely do so. Maybe we should, maybe Patch My VC should do some specific CrowdStrike swag for one of our next conferences, and you guys can all come by and claim it. That's not an actual promise or legal contract we just made.
Don't be promising things now.
Yeah. But I sincerely, I like as a group, as a team, as a tribe, as an industry, like holy shit, was that rough? And I know it was rough for many of you, and I know many of you. Somebody said lots of OT, but I know many of you like missed things that you didn't want to miss. You probably missed kids' games. You probably missed dates. Like you had to go and that's a thing we have to do sometimes. It's part of the gig. I get it. But I do want to acknowledge that and like hats off to you, because I also know that you probably just got crapped on nonstop for something that had nothing to do, that was nothing within your control. And I'm sure many of your orgs probably didn't thank you appropriately enough. I hope some of them did. I really do. I hope somebody got an $11 gift card.
11, ooh, maybe a 15 even.
I hope so, but I'm experienced enough to know that probably didn't really happen, not on scale. So again, my hats off to all of you, and thank you for joining. We love doing this. I'm glad you all had fun. I hope there was some mediocre of healing done here. And with that, we will close, and we will see you in whatever comes after August. Is that September? Sounds like September.
It is September.
That's the next month. I think that's the next month. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. We will talk to you next month.
Bye, guys. Thanks for coming.
Like literally the moment I joined, we said the recording started. Maybe that's when Colin tries to edit out all the crap. Like maybe that's where he starts. I don't really know, but here we are.